Hello everyone, I'm gonna have to set a little bit of context before I get to the kind of like pseudo clickbait title for this video. Might take a little while, but I promise we'll get there. I was recently diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 32. Quite late in life for an ADHD diagnosis, but here I am. And suffice to say, it explains a lot. It explains tons of problems I've had with like looking after myself. It explains issues I've had socially. It explains issues I've had with work and concentration, issues in employment of like, just being like showing up on time, working consistently, my grades at school. It explains a lot of my life, and a lot of the biggest issues I've faced in my life. And importantly, and kind of what I want to get into in this video, it explains a lot about my relationship with motivation and this thing I thought of as discipline. I've been on medication for a couple of weeks now for ADHD, and it's improved my life dramatically. It's extreme. Literally every single aspect of my life has improved in some way. I suddenly just have the will to do things I've known I should do for a really long time. I've been able to do household chores a lot more. I've been able to actually start on tasks that were just really intimidating for me to like get started on because they seemed complex and open-ended and my brain just couldn't cope with it. It's helped me enormously like concentrate when I'm working and get stuff done. I have way less like dead days than I used to, which used to be like honestly most days where I would try and work and I'd be sat in front of the keyboard, and even if I really tried to focus and concentrate and cut out all the social media and everything, it's just like every keystroke felt like a struggle. And now like I haven't had a single day like that since I started meds. Like every day has been incredible in that regard. And because I'm getting that energy out in the day as well, I've been actually feeling tired in the evenings. My sleeping pattern has improved enormously. Sleeping consistently and getting up at consistent times. I haven't had a single day since I started medication that I haven't had a single day where I've gotten up after noon, which I know that sounds pretty late as well, and that would like be an average day for me before. Like I get out of bed at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon, that's just what my body would just naturally always lean towards, no matter what I did to try and like discipline and pull it the other way. It would always fall back that way after like a couple of days. And yeah, I had every single day has been perfect in that. Well, not perfect, but it's been like way better in that regard since I started my medication. Medication wouldn't have been half as effective for me though if it wasn't for a lot of other work I'd been doing. Okay, it wouldn't have been half as effective without the coaching I started doing. I've been working with a coach from Healthy Gamer, GG. I can't recommend them enough. They do amazing work. They do really cool content. You should go check that out. Dr. K is really smart. He does really good content. You've probably heard of him. It's super good. I recommend those guys and their coaching program enormously. It helped me so much. But there was that I've been doing for months on end, and that paired with just, my working on myself, and for 30 years trying to do things, to build habits, to build routines, to use strategies and tools to help myself do better at all of these different things that I've been failing at for just so long. And they would work a little bit. Sometimes, I would apply a strategy and I would like get a plate spinning and be like, okay, my sleeping pattern is sorted out and now I can move on to my diet. And oh no, now I'm working on my diet, my sleeping's gone again. And I just couldn't seem to get all of these things like going, no matter how I strategized it, no matter how much I just worked on one at a time, moved from one to the next, and so on. But I did all that work, and then when we paired it with the medication, suddenly all that work I'd been doing and all those things I'd been learning, I could finally like put into practice effectively, and it was like I'd taken training weights off, and just suddenly all that stuff is working for me, and then it has knock-on compounding effects. So my point here is that it's not just the medication that's working for me, it's all the other stuff I'd been doing as well, but the other stuff just hadn't been anywhere near as effective because I needed the meds as well. You put them together and suddenly like things make sense, and I can do a lot better. So to get to more of the reason I'm making this video, I made videos a long time ago and even done like some talks where I talk about motivation versus discipline. These two concepts were and what that meant to me back then. And I'd been smashing my head against the wall trying to be disciplined for 30 years. And if I'd have like stepped back and stopped blaming myself, maybe a bit sooner, maybe I could have, sussed out what was going on a bit earlier. But the long story short is I grew up believing I was super incompetent, had no discipline. Every now and again I would be really successful because of a bout of motivation or whatever, and an inspiration and engagement. And it just so happened I really liked the things I did that provided eventual value happened to be things I liked doing. I liked making videos, and we have my Game Maker channel. I liked making games in Game Maker, my game that did well on Steam, and the things I liked and the things I really got into, I did well at, and the things that engaged my brain, I could always do really well at. But everything else, I couldn't look after my basic bodily needs. I couldn't sleep or eat correctly. I couldn't do just really, really basic things. I can't concentrate on things if I found them even slightly boring. Couldn't concentrate in conversations. I struggled so much with all of this stuff, and I thought that was just therefore my fault, that I was just incompetent, I was bad, I was lazy, and I blamed everything on myself, and I was so frustrated because I knew I had the physical and mental ability to do the things I needed to do, and I knew how to work out what I should do, and I just wasn't able to act, to actually do the thing, and that's because, well, I must have been lazy or had no discipline or some other moral failing. So I knew that I had motivation, and I knew that I had inspiration to do some things because I could see that in my life. And this thing I seemed to be missing was what I identified as must be discipline, right? I must be missing this core personality thing that I need in order to be able to act. But I've been learning a lot about ADHD recently, and I've been learning about the neuroscience of it, and how it affects the areas, the physical areas of my brain that actually govern action. When you have that kind of like deficiency with dopamine and noradrenaline and some of these connections between like emotional regulation areas of the brain and the area of your brain that ends up actually ultimately deciding what you physically do, and when that when some of those connections are weaker than others, like that impairs your ability to act. You physically, like, it literally prevents action. Like, there's nothing, it doesn't matter how disciplined you are, you can't do anything about that. There's no thing you can have that can just make you, that can make the neuroscience in your brain different. So I realize now that what I thought of as discipline was like the ability to act without dopamine, without noradrenaline, without that physical brain functionality that actually controls your actions. It's not possible. I mean, sure, you can also act out of anxiety and fear, and Lord knows I got, my value for money out of those things, but that's also no more consistent or reliable or sustainable than, random surges of dopamine on a good day when I'm feeling really motivated because it's the start of a project or a start of this new thing that I'm really interested in or whatever, right? So what I thought of as discipline doesn't really exist. I'm not saying there's nothing called discipline, but what I was thinking of it as isn't real. It's a myth that I made up to explain something I thought I was missing, when really what I didn't have was, partly at least, literally the neurochemicals that induce action. And obviously that's just, ADHD and so on, but like other stuff in your life obviously affects this. Your diet, your sleep, your mood, your enthusiasm, your engagement, like all of these different things affect the neurochemistry that's going on in your brain, and whether or not how easy you're going to find it to act on certain behaviors and what your brain is going to want and what it's going to find rewarding. Brains are complicated. And so in trying to fix my own life, before I had even considered that maybe I had ADHD, is that I tried to fix all of these different things. I've tried to fix my sleep, I tried to fix my diet, I tried to fix, exercise and all of that kind of stuff. And I had some successes here, usually temporary, but like sometimes successes, and sometimes they would last a while. They would last for months before they would eventually drop off. But turns out having ADHD makes some of that stuff very difficult to manage. It makes those routines very hard to stick to, even if you've been doing them for quite a long time. And so, when my meds came in, obviously all of my efforts were suddenly like starting to pay off because I was actually able to look after myself. And then it's like, it's like a multiplying effect on like how how well things would then go for me. And now my point here with all of this is that after 30 years of thinking that I'm lazy and being really ashamed of it while trying to put on a front of being kind of, I've learned some discipline or whatever. I knew that I was like actually super lazy and, I had no discipline and I was super incompetent. And after feeling that way for 30 years, I now, perhaps controversially, don't think laziness even really exists. Or at least I think it's loaded as a term. You might think I'm biased after going through this whole ADHD journey and whatnot. It's not that I now think everyone just has ADHD. But as I said, all of these other things can affect it. Your diet, your sleep, and all that sort of stuff is important, and looking after yourself is important. What I think instead now is that laziness is just how we usually describe an undiagnosed problem. I don't mean clinically. I don't mean in the sense that, you're not lazy, you just have ADHD or some other disorder or whatever like that. But I mean it's undiagnosed as in literally you just don't know what the problem is. If you can't bring yourself to do things that you should, that's a contradiction. It's a paradox. It doesn't make sense. You should, but you can't do it. So something is going on there. Like, if you know what to do, but you can't do it, then it stands to reason that your brain probably has a reason for doing that. Your brain isn't random and it doesn't hate you. It's a very complex machine, but it has its rhymes and reasons, and it's doing its best to look after you with the tools that it has, even if it might be compromised in some way or other. But the problem is, it's very difficult for you yourself to solve a problem with your brain because your tool for doing that is your brain, and it's an Ouroboros. I know I should, but I'm not. But I should be, but I'm not. But I should be, but I'm not. It just goes, it's a loop, and then you're frustrated. And it might not be a neurochemical thing, but it might be about what you really believe and what you really value. If you find yourself staying up really late, you might want to, actually interrogate why that is. Instead of being because I'm an idiot and I'm a failure, that's why, I've come to define myself by this just failing and frustration. Maybe ask yourself, why do you stay up? Well, naturally it's because you have a lot of fun in the evenings doing things, maybe late at night with your friends or whatever, and maybe you don't get the opportunity to do that during the day, so you're trying to get something back at night. You might have a real reason for doing those things. It might not be the best choice in the long term, but maybe you're not good at making the best long-term choices. And if you recognize that, maybe you can start to work with your brain and work out a compromise and work out how to get you to where you want to be. My point is, if you feel this way, I know I should be, but I'm not, you're not a failure. You don't need to define yourself by your frustration and your inability to act on things that you feel like you should. You're not undisciplined, you're not lazy, but you need to look after yourself, and you need to educate yourself on looking after yourself. And if you're struggling to do either of those things, maybe you could use some help in figuring out why you're struggling to do those things, for whatever reason it might be. There's a million and one reasons, but you might, it can really help a lot to have someone just to talk to help figure out why you can't do the thing, even though you feel like you should do the thing. And it can be a really long road, but you owe it to yourself to walk it. Brains are weird and complicated, and the climb to understand just how your own brain works, or even a part of how it works, never stops. But you really do owe it to yourself to climb, and if you think that also your laziness is letting other people down around you, then maybe you owe it to them as well. But what I don't think you're missing, and what I'm kind of trying to take back from some of these videos and things I've said in the past, is I don't think you're missing discipline, and I don't think you're missing some ethereal personality trait that means that you can just do stuff, because that's not how executive function in the brain works. Literally, it's just not. That's not how it works. I don't know what you might be missing, but you need to stop blaming yourself and start working with yourself. What can you do? How can you learn more? How can you build better routines? If a routine is failing, how is it failing? If you're like me and you can only do a task when it's in front of your face, when you see that dish that maybe needs washing, maybe do it now, because your brain isn't good at handling the concept of later. Maybe make lists, maybe work on your diet, maybe a million and one things you can try, but keep trying things, you know? And if these things aren't working, interrogate why, ask for help, find out what's going on. Because there's answers out there, and it's not... it can feel sometimes that you've tried everything and that it must just be you, and you must just be busted, and you must just be a failure, but it's not true, because it's just not how it works. It's not a thing. So help yourself. Let other people help you. Yeah, I don't know. I hope that was helpful. Maybe I'll make another video in 10 years taking back everything I just said, but I don't know. I really believe it all. I really do believe it. I don't think laziness is a real thing. I think there's a lot of things we just describe as lazy because we don't actually know what the actual underlying problem is. Anyway, make of that what you will. I was in two minds about making a video, even ever saying that I had ADHD on the channel. I don't know, it was just a thing, I don't know. But I don't know, I just had this idea in my head, and the only way I was going to get rid of it was to make a video about it, so I made a video about it. Thank you for watching. Patreon.com/SeanJS. Cheers, guys, and I'll catch you all next time.